chicos, empiezo otra vez con esa mierda. ¿Nos paras? Paro el stream, no hay sonido.
Giving people access and making things easier, because crypto right now has a UX problem, and anybody that's fighting to make that get rid of that UX problem, meaning making things easier to use, easier to work with, that's only going to help bring this to more people and benefit more individuals.
I think I'm getting some reports that there is no audio on the live feed. I'm not sure if you guys are taking care of that.
Si se esperan tantito, que I'm gonna go.
Okay, we can actually hear someone in the background in Spanish said if you can just wait a minute.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Having a little bit of audio technical problems, but we'll solve it just a minute.
Okay. Well, since no one can hear us, I guess we can just have a conversation.
Yeah, I think they're saying that Andres' mic was the only one that could be heard.
Okay. Well, at least we got the intro out then. That's good.
Yeah, at least there will be the recorded version. That.
All right, building on it. If it's okay with you guys, we will move directly on to the questions now.
I would actually first, I would like to ask a question to Kevin, just to kick off this AMA. It's one of the questions often asked at Hathor is why are you doing this? Like there are so many blockchains out there already. You know, why you're doing that? And obviously we reply with we have technical advantage, like a different technical architecture, and there's also what we just said about giving access to more people, more developers to build stuff on the blockchain that we thought was really hard. But I can see the same question to Kevin, and Coinmetro is like, why one more exchange? There are so many exchanges already out there. Why one more?
Sure. So I think that there's always, people always have a unique way of looking at things when you're talking about a novel market, right? Now, markets in general are all the same. They're all the same from the fundamental, how markets function. All markets function the same way. There's supply, there's demand, there's gatekeepers, there's platforms, etc. They all work in relatively the same function. So when we think about finance in general, how many banks exist? Now, would it make sense for the world to have one bank? Well, no, absolutely not. First of all, you'd be centralizing all the power with one institution, which would be crazy. And in fact, markets generally don't function when one asset or one platform has all the power. If you look at crypto right now, we're very much weighted in the wrong direction. But it's normal because it's a new market. But you have Bitcoin that's anywhere from high 50s to low 70%, of overall exposure across the network. So 70% of all liquidity, 70% of all volume, or 50, whatever the day's percentage may be, that really isn't a sign of a mature market. Over time, that will fall. Bitcoin will be more and more liquid over time, but the percentage of liquidity that Bitcoin owns in the market will have to fall to see a more mature marketplace. And it's the same thing when you talk about platforms, because you don't, especially when you're talking about centralized platforms or even decentralized platforms, because decentralized platforms, if there's one, then all the power is centralized on that one decentralized platform. And that's something that you don't want as a consumer, because obviously you want these platforms to be competing. You want protocols to compete. You want platforms to compete. You want exchanges to compete for your business. And if there's only one, obviously there's no reason to compete. So that's one reason. But the other reason is it's just an underserviced market. So there's lots of exchanges, and I'll be frank, most of them suck. That's just the way it is. Just like in life, there's lots of banks. I would say all of them suck, but we'll say most just to be nice. There's lots of car companies. I mean, you can go across any industry, right? Most things in life don't really live up to what the sales brochure says, right? You read something, it sounds great. You actually get the product nowhere near what they said it was going to be. And that's the exchange business right now. So customer support is abhorrent. I remember sending a message to Kraken, to Coinbase, to Bittrex or Bits back in 2017 or 18, and it taking 6 months to get a response. In fact, even recently, we had somebody on our team that emailed Coinbase. Took them 3 months to send a canned response. And that's ridiculous. If I'm giving somebody my money, especially if it's a centralized platform where they're controlling my assets, I want an answer now, not tomorrow, not 3 days from now, not a month from now. So focusing on customer experience, and not just customer experience that you can click less buttons. Everybody competes now to say, oh, you can onboard with us with only 17 clicks, or 21 clicks. That's great. That's awesome that you can onboard easily. But if I have a question, think of like your Revolut. I don't know if anybody uses Revolut. A lot of people do. If you ever tried to actually chat with Revolut and get a problem solved, good luck. 3 weeks later, you still have a problem. Now you can onboard quickly, but to get your problem solved is difficult. So focusing on customer experience all around, from customer support to the ease of use, just like you guys are looking at ease of use, we do the same thing, looking at ease of use as well. And that means also getting an answer when you need one. At pricing, making sure that retail regular individuals pay less, or at least the same, or even less than their institutional counterparts. Why should they pay more? They usually have less money, right? So at the end of the day, why should you pay a hefty fee because you simply don't have millions? That doesn't make any sense. So aligning fees with the type of clients that we're servicing, and then simply creating a system where people can gain access to services at the end of the day that maybe they don't understand, but they can still use. And I think if we think back to like the age of the internet, that was like your AOL, you've got mail. AOL wasn't the best platform, but it was easy. And that's what drove mass adoption. It was easy, they were customer friendly, and the UX was simple to use. And so, kind of building on that and just building fantastic customer support. And I think that's why, no matter how many businesses there are, this is just a business tip from my entrepreneurial experience of like 30 years, is that every time you go to someone and say, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to do this, someone goes, well, there's already a lot of those. Well, you just don't listen to that person. Literally just block that thought out of your mind. Because if you had that, if anyone ever had that thought, we would never have any businesses open, because there's always somebody doing the same thing you're doing. I can guarantee you. You can think of the most ridiculous thought in your mind and think, oh, that's a domain name. That's an awesome domain name. And you try to get it, it's gone, right? There's already somebody thinking what you're thinking. So you can always do it better. And that's what you should try to do. You should always try to go better than the competitor. And that's what we try to do at Coinmetro. That was a long answer to a short question. So sorry about that.
No, that's perfectly fine. I'm glad to hear this great discussion between the both of you. And we are picking out some really good questions here. I'm glad to see that there are questions from all over the world. And that's exciting to see for our community. So without further ado, we can start with a question for Jan. The question is from Daniel Kosinski. And it says, as a blockchain, Hathor stays in the middle of being a platform network and a consultancy group, labs. How do you plan to grow the network and attract developers from other chains to build on HathorNet?
Okay, so even though that we can say that we sit in the middle, like we are full-blown network, and we also have our consultancy arm. So what we learned during, like, let's say the first year after our network was public is that blockchain is still a new thing. it's really hard to onboard new clients, and you have a lot of people doing, proof of concepts and small tests. But if you really want to get larger corporations to really experiment and try and disrupt their business model, they're doing things for a lot of years, and for them to take on this innovation and change that, they really need a lot of support. And this is not something that is readily available yet. There are not a lot of people consulting on the blockchain with that experience. So one of the things that we learned is, okay, we also need to help them. And that's why through our company, Hathor Labs, we also do some consultancy work to help them, guide those companies a bit. But as of the question of attracting the developers, it goes a lot of what we were talking about, the ease of use. We saw that a lot of the blockchain platforms, they need a lot of specific knowledge. It's not easy to do. A lot of moving parts that you need to know, a lot of bugs that you can run into and lose a lot of money. And even though you already have specialized companies bidding on that, and you have companies certifying, auditing the smart contracts or anything like that, you still have a lot of bugs, and that leads to a lot of money loss. So for us, I think one of the biggest selling points is the simplicity of building Hathor, and you don't need to be a specialized blockchain developer. You don't need to fully understand what's going on behind the scenes, even though I'd say that that's pretty good, especially the more complex products you build. But I'd say the ease of use is the main selling point for us to attracting other developers from other networks. And actually, our focus is not only attracting developers from other networks. We also want to attract new developers, people who are not building on the blockchain yet, and they can see that, okay, it's not that hard. I can use that. So this is also one of our targets.
Awesome. Next question is for Kevin, and it comes from Salvador Orozco. Coinmetro claims to be a big supporter of the worldwide regulation of cryptocurrencies. Aside from holding active registrations with regulators in the USA and Australia, what are some of the additional actions that Coinmetro is taking to contribute to greater levels of compliance? That's a good question.
Sure. So let's see how I can pack this into a short answer. So aside from US and Australia, by the way, we obviously are licensed in Estonia, and we also have a sandbox license in Montenegro, and we also have an EMI agent license out of the Bank of Lithuania, and soon the FCA in the UK. So a few more licenses to pack in there. But so a few things. So in the beginning, when we first moved to Estonia, Estonia had passed this. It was an adaptation of a draft of the 5th anti-money laundering directive that Estonia used to create its FIU, or Financial Information Unit licensing, back in November 27, 2017. And when they did that, normally when you create new licenses, they're kind of, the bar is set too low, meaning that they're too easy to acquire, or they're too hard. They either go one side or the other. Either the country wants to be progressive, they set the bar low to see what happens. It's kind of a test. Or they set the bar too high because they already assume what will happen, and they don't want to let in just anyone. Well, Estonia set the bar low. We actually had an event inside of our offices back in 2018 where we discussed with the finance minister's office, with the FIU, with the FSA, which is the main regulator sitting in Estonia for capital markets, as well as banks and other service providers in Estonia, and told them that they absolutely needed to up the bar. They needed to change the requirements for that licensing, because they were allowing companies to come in and get licensing that had no presence in Estonia. They had no control over those entities, and those entities could do whatever they wanted. And that was going to end up being a PR nightmare, and more than likely, just a black mark on Estonia's kind of reputation. And that's exactly what happened, by the way. But before that happened, we actually ended up getting a draft of a new regulation, which we edited in-house, sent back, and had a few rounds back and forth with the finance minister's office. And they ended up adopting about 90% of the requirements we felt were needed. And that's the new law that was passed back in 2020. And shortly after, they canceled about 1,200 licenses because of that change in the regulation. So That's one thing we've done. Montenegro. So Montenegro, we actually helped Montenegro create a sandbox legislation. Sandbox essentially means kind of what it sounds like. So sandbox is where kids play. Well, for regulators, when they want to test out a new industry, right? So you have a financial regulator, you have crypto. They can't really apply it to any current regulation, or they don't think they can. So they create a sandbox. They create a place where you can come with minimal regulation, test. So you can play around, test things out. The regulator can see where the risk is, what they may need to do to actually amend current licensing guidelines, and or whether they need to create new licensing guidelines. And the businesses have the chance for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, depending on the length of the sandbox, to be able to operate fully and actually run their business and see if that jurisdiction is a good fit, and or find out if they actually need to be regulated in that jurisdiction or others. So we actually helped write a complete sandbox regulatory guideline, which was adopted by the CMA, the Capital Markets Authority, inside of Montenegro. And we became the first applicant and first approved applicant inside of that sandbox, along with another company called Ignium. And that's how we created our Invest platform, which is our STO platform, which allows us to create debt and equity tokenized securities, SMEs really, to create those securities, small businesses, and be able to sell those to raise capital. And also the secondary market, which we're releasing later this quarter. So those are just two things. We also have a sub company, a lobbying group that we have under the Coinmetro umbrella called the European Crypto Association. And I myself have probably traveled around and talked to a few dozen regulators over the last 2 or 3 years. And my pitch to the regulator is always the same. And they actually started listening, not just to me, but to a broader sector of people that were basically saying that, crypto was kind of something that the regulator should embrace, simply because they didn't understand that the auditability, traceability, et cetera, was actually to their advantage. Tax authorities, et cetera. These are things that when they came to understand them, they quickly understood that, why are we standing in the way of this? This actually makes our jobs easier. It makes us easier to track money, trace money, et cetera, taxes, which may not be something that all the Bitcoiners and everyone want to hear, but definitely it's something that allows the tax authority. It's easier for the tax authority to track assets, which is good for them. If you're a tax-paying citizen, it's good for you too. It will make it easier to file your taxes, hopefully in a few years, and not difficult. I don't know where people live around the world, but I know if you live in the U.S., filing taxes is not an easy process. In Estonia, it's like 3 button clicks. So they've already put their stuff on blockchain years ago. So good for them. But yeah, so we've done a lot and we'll continue to do more. The whole goal is not just about making Coinmetro, kind of putting Coinmetro out there. It's about making regulators understand that regulation is needed to a certain extent. We might not all like it, but there is a reason for regulation to be there. It does help with mass adoption and it helps with it at scale, but it needs to be done in a way that's smart. We don't need dumb regulation. We don't need regulation from 1938, or 1928 or 1919 to be applied to crypto assets. It doesn't make any sense. But the way to change that is not to put your middle finger up or your thumb up at the regulator. It's to work with the regulator to change it from the inside, because changing from the inside is much easier than changing from the outside.
Yeah, that's a great question and a great answer for it. I too believe that regulation has more to do with responsibility and putting that responsibility in the hands of the creators of these solutions. So great response there on your side, Kevin. Jan, we have a question from Oliver Gonzalez. I really like this question as well. What are the right incentives to make Hathor an attractive platform for developers? In your opinion, how does one get excited to start to build? Do you see anytime soon someone forking a big Ethereum project such as Balancer?
Okay, just a quick follow-up on the last answer from Kevin. I mean, one of the reasons we wanted to get listed on Coinmetro was particular for the compliance part. And even though I knew that they were highly compliant, I didn't have all the full details and the extent that they are helping the lawmakers. So that's really good to hear. And so really good answer. As for the question right now, I think there are 2 parts. I think there are the developers that are kind of let's say like more of the hackers, and they want to try out something new. And in that sense, the ease of use and the low entry costs for starting development on the blockchain it's definitely something attractive. And also, I guess that for these type of developers, a lot of it is also, if they believe on what the network is doing, their mission and all of that. And the second part is also, if there are jobs and there's demand for developers on this platform. Nowadays you have a lot of demand for Solidity developers, and there are a lot of people migrating to that. At the same time, as I said, we want to attract more people on Hathor that not necessarily need to be blockchain developers. And a part of it is attracting, companies and use cases to build on the platform. And in turn, that would bring some demand and paying jobs for that. So I think a big part of that is, having demand for use cases, and that will bring jobs and developers interested. And also, as I said in the beginning, just, more of the hackers, that they have this easy way to start creating the blockchain. Low entry barrier, and that would get things started if they also believe on the network. I don't see this kind of developers. Me myself, I'm a developer. What you do on your free time when you're not getting paid, you're not going to develop on something you don't believe in. So having something that you believe in, it's important also, and hopefully, I think Hathor can captivate to those kind of users and developers.
Fantastic. It is all about the accessibility and the ease of use for everybody to be able to bring their own solutions. Great answer there, Jan. Next question for Kevin. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing any of these names right, but you can tell me there in the comment section. This one is from Daisuke Suzuki. His question for Kevin is, how is Coinmetro able to offer the lowest fees in the industry?
Because we're awesome. Next question. So yeah, I'm glad you butcher names, because I'm famous for, I butcher names on AMAs all the time. I actually butchered them so bad that they become memes. So I think you did a pretty good job with that one. So yeah, how? Well, everybody could offer lower fees. Comparatively speaking, if you look at, even in the crypto industry in general, if you look at the cost of liquidity versus the cost of institutional liquidity versus the cost of retail liquidity, you will see a massive gap, right? So when you see a platform charging 0.3, 0.25, 0.5, 1%, whatever the fee, if you see, Coinbase at, 1 billion%, or whatever they're charging, you'll see that there's a massive difference between the institutional cost of liquidity and the retail costs. Now, that's normal because we're still a small market and we're still an immature market, and the market hasn't grown to the size yet where you're going to start to see major suppression of prices. If you look, I'll give you, and I do this a lot, but I'll give you a comparison to the FX market. So FX market back in late 90s, before it was regulated, you would pay a spread of probably something close to 0.5% when you had commission and spread built in, right? And that was insane. And if you tried to charge that much today, you would close the next day. I mean, no one would trade with you. Not even a stupid person would trade with you, because they do a Google search and find out that you're way too expensive. But at the time, if there's no competition, it's a relatively small market, and there's no way to get into the market, you're going to pay whatever fee someone, presents to you, because you want to get in the market. FOMO and aping into things didn't start with crypto, right? People have been aping into things in financial markets for 1,000 years, right? So when there's nowhere else in, you're going to pay whatever. And so what happens is that, the good thing, I think the cool thing about the crypto community in general, like I said, there's a community aspect. And I think lots of communities, whether those be exchanges, wallet platforms, et cetera, they want to do what's best for their clients. Obviously, we have other players in the industry that don't care about their clients. That always happens. Unfortunately, as the market gets bigger, greed also comes into the picture. But we're at a point right now where the market's too small for others to correct, right? What we charge, what I would say, is still a high fee. But in comparison to the institutional liquidity costs that we bear, it's a reasonable fee. And it's definitely lower than most everybody else in the industry. But you will see over time that everyone will be forced to do this, because what happens is clients start as an uninformed client, right? Uninformed client goes to any exchange, the biggest, the smallest, the whatever, and they trade, they're uninformed. When they become informed, they start to Google search. When they start to realize that they're paying too much, they will demand lower prices, and the market will reciprocate, or that market provider will go out of business. So we simply charge a fair fee based on what we have to pay for the underlying liquidity. Simple as that.
Yeah, that's really great. I think in Hathor we have the same approach as to the feeless part of building on the blockchain that makes it accessible to anybody to bring their ideas forward. And with you guys, it makes it easy for traders to come and not get scared away right away by the fees, and it makes it attractive for everybody. I agree.
Yeah, it has to be mutual beneficial. I mean, if financial businesses have to be beneficial to both parties, or eventually they fail.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another great question for Jan. Hathor, and it's a little bit long, so I'll try to break it down as short as I can. And I do want to remind you that we're taking some of these questions from Gleam, and we're trying our best to get some of these from the live stream as well, but we have a little bit of a delay there with the stream, so we're doing our best to catch as many as we can. So Jan, Hathor is often compared with Ethereum, stating on one side that there is no coding needed for nano contracts, and on the other side that it is feeless to mint your own tokens on Hathor. How close is this to the truth? And what does this look like from a practical user's perspective compared to a seasoned veteran developers? And this question is from Michael Witowski.
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay, good question. I'd say I'm not the best person to answer that, as nano contracts are under development. But yeah, the idea is it's the same thing that we did for tokenization, right? If you want to create a token on Ethereum, you have to write a smart contract. Yeah, obviously you can use one of the standards, but still, it's not an easy job. You know, I know. Those of you who already tried it, even though it's already consolidated, there are a lot of steps, and you are super extra careful because you're very scared of making any mistakes, right? And that would incur a big loss. So the idea for nano contracts is the same. You know, we're going to get the most used features. We're going to make them native on our protocol, so users don't need to code things at all. You know, they just need to configure some of the parameters, the same way for tokens you do, like the SPY, the name, the symbol, and all that, and that would be ready. Obviously, we also we are looking into more ways that we could make them more customizable, and that would be like a trade-off between usability, you know, ease of use and complexity. So this is super important to us. But yeah, the basic idea is that even the more inexperienced developers, people who are not used with to the blockchain, could develop their own products. The comparison with Ethereum comes a lot, you know, and a lot of people use the term, you know, Ethereum killer and all of that, and you know, there's a big graveyard of Ethereum killers, I'd say, out there. So it's a big responsibility to bear, and I don't think that this would be the case. You know, there are a lot of the markets that we can gain from Ethereum. At the same time, there are a lot of other things that Ethereum is doing, and will continue doing, that we're not going to attack. You know, so I think it's a big enough space for everyone to compete. You know, there's plenty for everyone, especially considering that it's still like a very young market. You know, when we get more adoption, more institutions, and all that, it's going to be an explosion. You know, there's going to be plenty to go around. So we don't need to say that we need to kill this other chain in order to succeed. You know, there's going to be a lot of space in the crypto market. But yeah, basic idea of nano contracts is taking the same thing we did for tokenization and doing for some more customizable contracts on our network.
Right.
Can I make one quick
absolutely.
Comment?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you mentioned the size of the market. I have a question for everybody. I do this on every AMA. No one ever knows the answer, but just to see. So how much, so we talk about the size of the addressable market for securities, because obviously we're talking about for not just securities, but obviously Hathor is trying to break way also into the ability to kind of create those type of markets as well. So if we talk about securities markets, just settlements of security transactions in 1 year between the major US markets, UK markets, and Brazilian markets, only those 3 markets, how much do you think in terms of US dollar value settlements happen between those three countries and on their equity markets alone? Anybody have a guess?
That's a couple of trillion.
Not even close. So it's 1.4 quadrillion.
Wow.
1.4 quadrillion. So if a trillion, so in 1 quadrillion, there is, let's see, that's 1,000 trillion, it's 4,000 trillions in 1 quadrillion. So it's roughly, what's that, 5.6 trillions, or 5,600 trillions worth of settlement. Yeah. So it's a big market, yes. And Ethereum's not going to take a quadrillion worth of volume. That's for sure. No matter how much it scales, not going to happen.
Yeah, and I see that if you know, like with our idea of easy to use, and we can onboard more institutional players, then that's a market that's coming to the blockchain. You know,
absolutely. There will need to be many protocols with very many niche applications to support the actual size of the global financial market. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's going to take a while, right? I think we're still beginning, right? Even this year that we're seeing a lot of institutions coming on board, it's still very early. You know, I don't know, like 5, 10 years, 10, 20. It's going to take a while. I think a lot of people in this market's like, yeah, it needs to happen today, yesterday, but they have to realize that it's a slow process. You know, we're not going to disrupt the global market overnight, right?
Right. Any progress that's a quick process is no progress at all. So definitely our developers are hard at work on delivering those nano contracts. And it's something that is an ambitious goal for Hathor. So it has to come out after proper testing. And this comparison with Ethereum comes out very often within our community. But I think every blockchain provides its own solution. And it's detailed and constructed in its own vision of that solution. So I think it's, you know, the market's big enough for everybody. And instead of looking at it as an ETH killer, it's more than anything what we can all contribute to the ecosystem to really creating solutions that are sustainable for a long term on the blockchain. So definitely agree with the both of you on that one. And piggybacking actually on that question, there's another question from Trent Enel. I hope I'm saying that right. And this is for Kevin. It's amongst a wide variety of options for coins to list on Coinmetro, what made Hathor stand out as a leading option, and what are the active trading options for HTR on Coinmetro?
Sure, good question. Good question considering the AMA. So we tend to list, we have a listing process, I think, that's different than most exchanges. So from our aspect, it's not just about listing new coins, or tokens, even when they're requested by our community. We like to look for projects and businesses that that share some of the same ethos that we share. That's important to us. But aside from that, obviously, from the business standpoint, at some point, we may have to bring on assets that maybe don't share all the ethos points we do. However, one core thing we look for is the ability to interact with that company, that project, in more ways than just a listing. So that can mean focusing and working on product together, working on services together, launching services together, interacting in each other's communities, like this AMA here, for example. And you know, we have to check a lot of boxes. It's not, and obviously we look at the company to make sure that you know, that there's experience behind the company, that there's know-how behind the company, that the company is actually producing something or creating something, that they've had success in doing whatever they're trying to do. And that, you know, we feel that in the long term that they're actually going to see that success. And so looking at, you know, we have people pitch us tokens and coins all the time. And one of our, I guess, one of the guys that helps us out a lot on social media and things by the name of Dread Bongo, who's on Twitter. Hathor was, I think he might have been the first person that mentioned Hathor to us some time back. And it ended up making its way to a short list. And, you know, when I personally looked at Hathor, so it always kind of was interesting to me that there weren't more businesses and projects working on utilizing the liquidity and the relative security of the Bitcoin network to build out additional services. Because when you really think, everybody always talk, every time you talk about a new token, everybody says, well, what's its utility? Well, what does it do? But Bitcoin has no utility. I mean, in reality, when you really think what Bitcoin is, it holds the liquidity. And by way of holding most of the liquidity in the market, it becomes that store of value and or that main kind of, let's say, it's not really a value transfer vehicle, but it is a way for people to move in and out of the market, right? So I guess you could call it like it's almost like an on and off ramp. It's your main crypto, one of your main crypto on and off ramps. In DeFi, obviously that's ETH, but in centralized, that Bitcoin takes the most of that because Bitcoin's available on more platforms than any other asset. And then because of that amount of liquidity, it has that store of value type. You could call it a utility, but really it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy because it holds all the liquidity. So when you talk about actual utility value, what can Bitcoin do? I don't know. Can't really answer that question. So, I've seen projects in the past like RSK, for example, that also utilize some form of the Bitcoin network and build off of it. And I thought that was interesting. And I never saw anyone else really trying to dip their toe too much into that type of in that type of ecosystem, because obviously Bitcoin is one of the most secure networks in crypto, if not the most secure. Not to mention it's where all the liquidity sits. So that obviously kind of lit the light bulb up for me. And then just looking the fact that the UX problem that I talked about in crypto, I love companies that are tackling the UX problem. I think it's cool that some companies go down, the geeky tech route. People like creating these, 1980 video game looking interfaces, and they're really, people can geek out in there. That's great. But the vast majority of the public is not going to use an interface like that. They won't understand it. It's going to be, it's either too minimalistic or there's too much going on. People need things that are simple. That's really how we gain mass adoption. Mass adoption is going to lead to obviously more business, which is great for the business aspect of any business in this industry, but it's also going to open the doors for more people, which is going to help more people, which is also a great thing and part of our ethos, and I think part of the ethos at Hathor as well. So that was also something that was interesting and lit another light bulb up for me. So those two things combined, I think, is what made me dig a bit deeper. And then after people on our team really started to dig in and chat more with Hathor and open up Slack channels and really started to dig in and talk to the guys behind the scenes, we quickly found out that it definitely was a company that we'd like to work with. It kind of checked all the boxes, and that's why we had the listing. And right now, I believe we have listings up for, I think it's HTR Euro, if I'm not mistaken. Be terrible if that was wrong. And I know HTR USD is around the corner. And I would suspect HTR, if we don't have it up already, HTR ETH is probably going to be one that's going to end up, because since there's so many decentralized on and off ramps, it usually makes sense for us to match those similar pairings as people become used to trading against Ether as a base pair.
Awesome. Definitely, yeah. Looking into crypto, it's just much more about the store of value. It's much more than that. It's a lot about the technology and the solutions that can come through this technology. And I agree with you, definitely. A lot of times people are just mainly focused on the price of a certain coin or a certain token. And what's really important is what we're trying to build with it, what that future looks like. So
and that usually, and if that future comes to fruition, it means better pricing as well. So yeah, I think those things come hand in hand, right? So if you're only focused on price, that's not going to last long. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. This question, I like it also because it comes from one of our women in the community, which I think both our projects are strong on attracting more women to bring solutions to build on the blockchain. I think that's fantastic. Definitely, we want to create more awareness for women to come and help us build these solutions. So that's great for the community. And this question is from Zaira BL, and it's a question for the both of you. So I think we'll go with Kevin first. I think this is a straight punch out there as a question, so it'll be fun for you to answer. Is compliance Coinmetro's strongest plate on the table?
No, but it's indirectly linked to everything else we do, because as regulations get tighter, now compliance is a very small piece of regulation, right? So if you have a regulatory manual, like a bunch of policies in your business, that's, yay high, compliance is like this, really. I mean, it's maybe 20 pages of 1,000. So it's not, but it's very important because you have to understand, especially with centralized exchanges or centralized platforms, when, and I don't say if, but when, regulation gets tighter. We have something called MiCA that's already being talked about in the EU, that's markets and crypto assets. It's going to be a major movement in regulation, something like MiFID was for the underlying financial markets. MiCA will be for crypto markets. When that comes into play, and it will come into play, if you have been historically a centralized counterparty that has done nothing to mitigate whether that be fraud on your platform, whether it be dealing with sanctioned individuals, basically going outside of the lines when it comes to the laws that are supposed to be applied to financial platforms, you're going to have a majorly hard time getting regulated. And if you can't become regulated and you continue to operate, you have the possibility that funds get frozen. And if funds get frozen or any other way they try to sanction your funds, and that is difficult with crypto, but not impossible, especially because many crypto exchanges use custodians, and those custodians will definitely heed to a court order from some major jurisdiction. So if that happens, those funds can be stuck for years while you go through litigation. And that means you're just a regular user with a couple Bitcoin or a couple ETH or whatever on a platform, and all of a sudden it's stuck for 5 years. That sucks. Not only that, but imagine that, I think from a higher level, I love privacy. I think privacy is a great thing. I wouldn't want to take away anybody's privacy. But in the world we live in, unfortunately, when it comes to moving money, there is a need for some type of auditability and traceability. Because I as a platform, I as a CEO of a platform, don't want to be moving money that ends up trafficking children, around the world. Or I don't want to be moving money that ends up, buying automatic rifles that end up shooting 45 people in some random state in the United States. So I need to protect everybody from those type of things. And to do that, I need proper compliance. And proper compliance means that my business is more stable. So as regulation gets tighter, I can still service my clients. And I think that's super important. So it indirectly touches every piece of our business. But from a client perspective, it's absolutely not the most important thing on the table, but it does touch every aspect of the business.
Great answer. And we are running closer to the final minutes of this AMA.
In this context, I just asked Kevin to show his t-shirt.
Yeah. Oh, I love that t-shirt, by the way.
Yeah.
That is a great t-shirt. I'm sure we'll get many
You're on
comments
mute,
on
Kevin.
it.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I was just saying this says KYC in case you missed it. Yeah, and that's me wearing the Colonel's uniform. So there you go.
I think it's great.
One thing important though to say, I think, is there is like this big narrative also about the crypto market being used for money laundering and financial activities, which is, it's being dismantled, I think, piece by piece. I think last week we had the former CIA, I don't know what his position, but saying that, just a small fraction of it, like less than 1%, is used for criminal activity and all that. So there's this big misconception still, but I think the compliance plays a big role, and it's important.
If I could take 2 minutes and just to put a little texture on that one, because you're right. Obviously, the market is also about 0.1% the size of the global financial market or less. So you have to take that ratio a bit with a grain of salt. But it doesn't make sense for criminals to launder money in crypto. It's pseudo-anonymous for the most part. Even privacy coins, you have to understand, if it can be built, it can be broken. And if it hasn't been broken already, it probably will be. So if you're trying to obfuscate your ill-gotten gains through crypto, you will probably be found out at some point, because at some point your money is going to touch a data point that has so much more data they can track it to you. So that's one thing. The other side is that crypto initially was absolutely majorly used for what would be criminal activity. And so if you take any Bitcoin transaction and you go back about 30 to 40 hops, you'll probably touch Silk Road. And we've actually ran tests on this in Coinmetro, taking random addresses and going back. I think we went 100 hops the first time, and then we narrowed it down: 80 hops, 60 hops, 40 hops. And I think it was 30 something hops, 80% of all transactions touch Silk Road. Now, you may not agree that buying drugs online should be illegal, but it is. Just like you might not agree that not paying your taxes is not a bad thing, but it is illegal, which means if you take that into context, the vast majority of crypto traders don't pay the taxes they probably should pay. So that would mean under the law that they are criminal, and thus the transactions they make are criminal in nature. So it depends on how you look at the numbers, but I would agree with you that criminal activity, what I would consider real criminal activity, like guns and human trafficking, it is such a small percentage, it wouldn't fit inside of the 18 decimal points probably of a Bitcoin transaction, to be fair.
Great. So we still have about 5 minutes, and do want to apologize for that little hiccup we had with the audio. It was my microphone, so my bad. But we did fix it on time, and we still have the remaining 5 minutes for Jan's side of Cyro's question. And if we end up just finishing with that question, I just want to thank all of our viewers for following, because we got some great engagement on this AMA, so it's been really great. So now side of the question for Hathor, for Jan, is our nano contracts Hathor's strongest plate on the table?
Well, I mean, it's part of the ecosystem, right? It's going to be a big part of what we're building. I think just with the tokenization platform that we have already running, it's, there are a lot of use cases that can be built because a big part of the companies, as we said in the beginning on the consultancy side that we're building, a big part of it that's preventing companies to get into the market is just it's a new market. So just the tokenization side, it's something that already enables a lot of companies to build use cases if they have the right support and they see the value of it. But definitely the nano contracts are going to enable people to do some more, I'd say, cool and customized things on the network. On top of that, also, I'd say that our side DAGs functionality that we're planning for later this year or early next year, it's also very important because a lot of the companies, they don't want their data on the public network. And at the same time, us, our team is a big believer on public networks. So this is like a mix of public and private networks, kind of private networks secured via the public hash rate. So, even though the data is not public, you cannot alter it. So yeah, definitely the nano contracts it's one of the most waited for features from our community, and I think it enables a lot of new use cases. I'm not sure if it's kind of the strongest selling point. I guess that's for us, we can just develop it and run it and see how it ends up. A lot of the things that we initially plan, it doesn't go according to plan. Only when we go to the market and we let people use it that you see that how it goes. Like Ethereum in the beginning, like general computing platform in 2017, it was using for ICOs. That was not their original plan. So we can just build stuff and have people use it, and low entry barriers so a lot of people can use it. And I'm sure a lot of interesting ideas are gonna pop up.
Great answer. We are wrapping up, and I wish we could be giving away as a reward some KYC Kevin Murcko shirts to everybody. It's a fantastic shirt. But we will be giving away the Hathor to the two best questions and our two random followers for this stream. I think it's been a great discussion. I think we've covered some very good points here that the entire community wanted to know into deeper relation there. And any last comments from our CEOs here?
I'm just saying, super happy with this listing. As Kevin said, we have the euro par, probably going to have the dollar par also. So it's, the first fiat pair that we have. Also super happy that we're going to be discussing probably further collaborations on other platforms, as Kevin was telling that they have, which is, I think, great for the whole ecosystem.
Hathor staking maybe coming soon. So yeah, I would say the same. Like I said, we are very picky. We're very choosy as to what we list. And I think up to this point, including this particular listing, we've been pretty spot on. So hopefully that good luck rubs off on Hathor as well. And you guys continue to do great things, and I think you will. And we're definitely here to assist you in any way we can. With the end goal, I think, of both companies is, obviously we're both businesses. Both businesses need to make money. That's what businesses do. However, part and parcel to making money is making sure that our client base has the best service and absolutely best access to things that we feel will just make their lives easier, whether that's on the financial side or whatever, depending on what type of services we're offering. So yeah, I'm excited as well for the future and can't wait to see what happens next.
Thank you guys. It's been great having all of you here. Great questions, great answers as well. And we will continue to edit this live stream to upload it and so everybody can have those answers that they were looking for. It's been great talking with you guys, and hoping we can have one of these AMAs with Kevin in Spanish. I heard his Spanish is pretty good, so for our Spanish community, that would be great as well.
Absolutamente. Cuando quieres, lo hacemos.
Qué bueno, perfecto. Thank you, everybody, and till next time.
Cheers,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Andres. Bye.